Hello everyone, hope you're all doing good. Myself Tanuja, and the subject that we're discussing right now is biology. So today I'm here with you with a very interesting chapter, the third chapter of your plus 2 biology, which is reproductive health. Okay, so you've already completed your first chapter, which was sexual reproduction in flowering plants. It was kind of a lengthy chapter, I agree. And then you had the second chapter, the human reproduction, which I think you've already completed. This is the third chapter, the reproductive health, and this is the last chapter of your reproduction unit. This is a very small chapter. It's a very small chapter. It would take me like 2 videos or something. It's going to be a very small chapter, but it's very interesting and it's very easy. Okay, it actually includes the topics which you already know, which we already know. Topics like amniocentesis. You may not know that, but it's fine. I'll teach you. Topics like contraceptives. Topics like population control, right? Simple topics like sexually transmitted diseases. These are the topics that we are going to discuss in this particular chapter, right? Reproductive health. Let's start the chapter without any further ado. About the introduction. If I give you a introduction about this chapter, in this chapter we'll mainly deal with what reproductive health is. We'll define what reproductive health is, and then we'll discuss how to attain reproductive health in a social level, in an individual level, and all that. Okay, so what is reproductive health? Simply, let me ask you, what is health? What do you mean by health? Okay, it's a state of not having any diseases, fine, but it's also a stage where all your body parts, all your body systems are working perfectly, right? So what would be reproductive health? Reproductive health is nothing but a condition where your reproductive system is working perfectly. So you have the male reproductive system and you have the female reproductive system. You have learned both in detail in your second chapter. So the reproductive system, whether it be of male or female, should be working perfectly without any malfunction. If it is so, we say we are reproductively healthy. Right, so healthy reproductive organs with normal functions defines reproductive health. But that's not just the mere definition of reproductive health. That's just the physical definition. Reproductive health actually has a more broader aspect. What are the broader aspects of reproductive health? According to WHO, World Health Organization, reproductive health is actually total well-being in all aspects of reproduction, not just the physical aspect. So the first definition that we've learned is what we think reproductive health is. But actually World Health Organization tells us that reproductive health is not just mere physical reproductive health, or it's not just merely a condition where reproductive organs function properly, but it also includes aspects such as emotional, behavioral and social, and also physical, obviously. Alright, so physical aspects, which as I already said includes the reproductive organs and its functions. The emotional aspects, which includes the emotional feelings, the problems, the conflicts, the issues that we have with our partner relating to reproduction and how we solve it. That includes the emotional aspect. And then comes the behavioral aspect. What is our behavior towards reproduction? What is our behavior towards reproductive organs, reproductive systems? What is our behavior towards that? That comes in the behavioral part. And then the social part, how the society interferes with reproduction. Of course it interferes with reproduction, right? In many aspects, society is largely concerned about new couples reproducing and having kids. Am I right? I mean, society, the people around us are really concerned whether after marriage we make kids and in what interval we make kids, right? Society is concerned. I don't know why. They shouldn't be. But all that comes under the social aspect of reproduction. So if all these aspects are perfect, if all these aspects are all right, we can say we are reproductively healthy. So that's about what reproductive health is. Now moving on, the first part of your chapter 3.1 is reproductive health problems and strategies. So if any of these aspects are disturbed, or if there is any problems if you find any problems in any of these aspects, you can call it reproductive health problems. And how do we solve it? We use different strategies. So let's discuss some of them. The first one is family planning. What do you mean by family planning? Family planning is nothing but a married couples after getting married would sit and plan their family. How do they do that? They actually sit down and they think how many kids they want. Okay, according to their financial stability, according to their situation, that their environment, their situation that they are living in, their livelihood, according to all of that, they'll plan how many kids they want. And they should also plan at what intervals they want kids. Let me be more precise. If you get married, after you get married, it obviously, maybe you will think about kids, maybe you will not. Okay, that's totally fine. Some people want kids, some people don't. That's totally fine. Okay, that also comes under behavioral aspect, because some people think not wanting kids is a big issue. It's like a big crime in this country right now, right? Not wanting kids is a big crime. You don't want kids? Oh my God, what happened? What is there to happen, man? I mean, if I don't want kids, I don't want kids. That's it, right? If me and my partner decide to not have kids, that's totally fine. That's our decision, right? So similarly, that all comes under the behavioral aspect. So after getting married, a couple can think whether they want kids or not. And if they want kids, how many kids do they want? And if they decide they want 2 kids, what should be the gap between the birth of these 2 kids? How does it affect the family? All these comes under the topic family planning. Okay, so it is the action plans and programs at a national level. It also includes actions and programs at national level as well. And this family planning was actually initiated in 1951. Okay, so this is family planning. This is a strategy that we take to solve many reproductive health issues. And then you have reproductive child health care, otherwise known as RCH, reproductive child health care. This is also something similar to family planning, but it's a more improved program. Okay, it is a more improved program. It mainly includes the concept of creating awareness. So it creates awareness between people about reproduction. So many people tend to have a lot of myths about reproduction. They tend to believe in false assumptions, and they tend to follow that. They tend to believe that, and then they tend to spread that as well. So there are a lot of misconceptions and myths spreading related to reproduction. So this shouldn't actually happen. People should really know what reproduction is. People should really know how to reproduce. Right, all this is really important. How do we know how to reproduce? Do we have that knowledge from birth? We don't. We acquire it during a lifetime, right? So we should get it in the right way, and not by any wrong means. We should get it from the help of professionals, right? We should also get it from books, right? We should get the right and proper and correct knowledge, accurate knowledge. We should not be getting any myths or misconceptions, right? So that's really important in the case of reproduction. So how do we do that? How do we also provide facilities like hospitals and stuff, and then provide support for the mother and the child. All that comes under reproductive child health care. And when we talk about creating awareness, there are a lot of topics that we create awareness on. And if I mention some, the first one would be reproductive organs. Of course, you already know about reproductive organs. You are just studying in 12th standard, but you already know about human reproductive organ, both male and female. You totally know the structure, you know how it functions, right? You know all that in detail. Why do you think we taught you that? Why do you think your teachers taught you that? We taught you that because you will have to know it. If you are growing up to a responsible individual, you should know about your reproductive organ, and you should obviously know about your partner's reproductive organ. It's really important. So that is the first thing that we are creating awareness about, the reproductive organs. And then we have the adolescence and related changes. Of course, it's a very important topic. It's a very important topic that even children and parents both need awareness on. Because at the time of adolescence or teenage, the children tend to have a lot of changes, both physical and emotional. They tend to be more emotional, they tend to be more rebellious, right? They tend to be more independent. They are curious, they are asking the question why all the time, right? And the parents get so frustrated because of all this, but they shouldn't, because those are natural changes. They tend to happen and they should happen. You should be worried if that doesn't happen. If you should be worried if your child is not turning rebellious during their teenage, because they should. By some means, they should. They should shout at you. They should get angry at you. It's normal, right? Because during the adolescence period, they undergo a lot of changes. It's a very crucial time for them. And during that time, the biggest thing that a parent can do is to be a support for them, understand them, talk with them, communicate with them. So all this comes under the adolescence and related changes. And then you have safe and hygienic sexual practices. Obviously, hygiene is a very important concept when it comes to reproduction. It's not like any other things that we do. It's not like any other course that we do. It's very important. Hygiene is very important when it comes to reproduction, because otherwise there are a lot of chances of infection, right? Infection of the reproductive tract and otherwise also. So you should be very careful, very safe. You should be very hygienic when you do your intercourse and reproduction and everything like that. And then about STDs, sexually transmitted diseases, which you may not know now, but you will learn at the end of this chapter. I'll be ending this chapter with sexually transmitted diseases for sure. You have AIDS, which is also a sexually transmitted disease. It's more common. That's why I have it here. You should have an idea about how STDs is spread, because if you know how STDs are spread, you won't, you'll take the precaution. You'll take the measures for prevention of STDs, because STDs, most of them can't be cured. So you can't ask for cure if you have an STD, but you can prevent it, right? So you should know how to prevent it. You should know how STDs are spread. You should know which are the STDs, right? So all this comes under the concept STD. And then you have birth control, which is really important, which is one of the biggest topic that we will be discussing in this chapter, most important and the lengthiest, okay? Birth control options, which is very important. Why is it important? I'll tell you later on. Then you have care of pregnant mothers. This is a very important topic, because pregnant mothers need a lot of care, because it's a situation where their body and their mind undergoes a lot of changes, hormonal changes, physical changes, and everything of that sort, right? And at that time, what they need the most is care and support. But many of them still don't know this, unfortunately. So we should give awareness to everyone, including the poor people, including the rich people, everyone. Okay, it doesn't matter which class you live in. It doesn't matter what your financial situation is. Nothing matters when it comes to reproduction. When it comes to reproduction, everyone should know all these topics in detail, right? So care of pregnant mothers, and then postnatal care of mother and child. The child and the mother should get care after the birth of the child. Okay, so what do you mean by postnatal? After the delivery, after the birth of the child, the mother and the child both need care. Okay, there is a notion where after the birth, the mothers are ignored and only the child is concentrated. Only the child is given care and protection. But that's not right, because the mother is where the child comes from, right? Right, the mother's body have undergone a lot of changes, and the mother also needs care after the delivery. It's not like the next day the mother can jump around and run. No, that's not possible. The mother needs a lot of care, needs a lot of support, needs a lot of emotional support, mental support, physical support, all that kinds of support. So that comes under postnatal care of mother and child. And then you have importance of breastfeeding, which is really important. Breastfeeding, colostrum is really important for the child's health, immunity, right? So knowledge about breastfeeding, we should teach a mom how to breastfeed, right? We should teach a mom what the right position of breastfeeding is, what is not right, what is wrong. It should be taught, right? That's about breastfeeding. And then you have equal opportunities for male and female child, which is also important. And then you have social evils like sex abuse, sex related crimes, etc. We should also be aware of all that which is happening around us, right? So these are the topics. These are some of the topics that we give awareness through the RCH program, or the Reproductive Child Healthcare program, right? I hope it's clear. Now, moving on, you have a very interesting topic, which is amniocentesis. What is it? Amniocentesis. This is not a huge topic, but this is a term you should be aware of as a biology student, or simply as a individual. You should be aware of what amniocentesis is. So what is amniocentesis? Amniocentesis, I'll just explain the process to you in brief, in simple words. During pregnancy, inside the uterus of a mother, there will be a fluid. So simply saying, the child simply baths in the fluid, right, when it's inside our mother's uterus. Okay, so there is a fluid inside a mother's uterus, and this fluid is called the amniotic fluid. Okay, it's called the amniotic fluid. Okay, and if we take this amniotic fluid during pregnancy, if we take out this amniotic fluid via injection, if we take it out via a needle, if we take it out and if we analyze it, this amniotic fluid will contain the cells of the fetus, because the fetus or the baby inside the uterus is called the fetus. Okay, so the fetus is lying in the amniotic fluid, so obviously there will be cells of the fetus inside this amniotic fluid, and if we take this amniotic fluid outside and if we analyze this amniotic fluid, we can identify if the child or if the fetus has any kind of sexual or cognitive or inborn disorders, any genetic disorders, right? We can analyze if that child or fetus has any genetic disorders. A lot of genetic disorders can be identified this way, can be diagnosed this way. So it's a very important topic when it comes to sex and reproductive health. Okay, so sex determination. Also, you should understand one more point, that amniocentesis also helps us to identify what the sex of the baby is, even before the baby is delivered. So even before the birth of the baby, we can understand the sex of the baby, whether it's a male or a female. We can understand that. Also, one more point that you should understand is that by amniocentesis, we can also understand what the sex of the baby is even before the birth. But in India, that's not legal. Okay, in India, amniocentesis is legal. Of course, amniocentesis is legal. We can perform amniocentesis, we can diagnose any genetic disorders and all that. But sex determination is banned in India. Sex determination via amniocentesis is banned in India because of female feticide. So, female feticide was a practice which was followed by many cruel people in the world, in India especially. They believed that female children are a huge burden to the family. So what they did was, if they knew the child or the fetus was female even before the birth, they would just go for abortion. So in order to prevent that, sex determination via amniocentesis is not legal in India. Okay, and in this amniocentesis process, as I already said, amniotic fluid is taken and it is analyzed. Because it will obviously contain fetal cells, and it helps us to understand genetic disorders. If I go for examples, you have the Down syndrome and the sickle cell anemia and other genetic disorders like that. You can diagnose about 30 disorders, genetic disorders via amniocentesis. I hope that's clear. So here you have a picture of how an amniocentesis process works. So if you look at the picture here, you can see a needle, and you can see the baby is lying here. So you actually take a fluid, an amniotic fluid from the mother's uterus, and then you analyze it for genetic disorders. Okay, I hope that's clear. Now moving on, we have one of the most important and kind of lengthiest part of this chapter. It's the most important part of the chapter, the part 3.2, population stabilization and birth control. As I already said, this is one of the most important part of the chapter. You tend to have a lot of questions from this particular topic. Okay, now moving on. What do you mean by population stabilization? What do you mean by population? Of course, the number of people living in a particular area is known as population. If we take our country, India, we know that we are the first, right? We are the country that has the most population in the whole world. Right, we are first in that position. But is that actually a big gain? Is that actually appreciation or boon? Maybe not. Okay, maybe not. It's not a good thing, because if you have a lot of population, you tend to have competition for food, for shelter, for job, for all that. Okay, so actually having a high population is not a benefit. Right, it's not actually a benefit. So we should know how to control population. So how do you control population? You can't go around killing people. That's not possible. You should control the number of births. The number of births should be controlled. So how do you control number of birth? By birth control. How do you do that? I'll tell you. First, let me discuss about population stabilization. If we look at the world population data, it was 2 billion in 1900, it was 6 billion in 2000, it was 7.2 in 2011 census. So that's the last census which took place. So in 7.2 billion, in 2011 it was 7.2 billion. The world population, I'm talking about the world population here. And if you look at the population of India, population of our country, you have 350 million in 1947 during our independence. It was just 350 million. But in 2000 it increased to 1 billion, and in 2011 it's about 1.2 billion. Okay, it's the last census that happened, so that's the only data I can provide you with, right? And this is the data that you have in your NCERT textbook. So this is the population right now. So what's the problem with this? What's the problem with increasing population? And what is the reason that population is increasing? What are the reasons of population growth? What are the main reasons of population growth? Let me tell you. We already know that science has improved, health department has improved, right? The field of health, as the field of treatment, the field of medicine has improved a lot. Now we have medicines for almost all diseases. We have cure, right? We have treatments. We have good scientific methods for diagnosis. And due to this, due to the improvement of our health field, the rate of death, the mortality rate has decreased. And due to this, population is increasing, or population growth is taking place. If I be precise, there is a decline in death rate. And there is also a decline in maternal mortality or maternity mortality rate. Maternal mortality rate or maternity mortality rate. What that is, it's also known as MMR, which is a very important question for you. You will be asked to expand MMR, and you will have to write maternity mortality rate or maternal mortality rate. So what is this? Usually in the case of birth in the old days, in the case of delivery, mothers used to have some complications, and then they used to die. Okay, so this is what is known as maternal mortality, and this declined in a large scale because of our improvement in the health industry or in the health field or in the medicine field, right? That is one reason for population growth. And the next reason is, of course, infant mortality rate or IMR. Okay, and also another reason for population growth is the increase in number of people in the reproductive age. So infants can't reproduce, children can't reproduce, and old people can't reproduce. So the people who are living in the reproductive age is, the number of people who are living in the reproductive age is high, and due to that, population growth can take place. So these are the main reasons. You have 4 reasons here in this particular slide, and these are the 4 reasons of population growth. I hope it's clear. Now moving on, what is the problem of population growth and how do we control it? I already told you about the problem. There will be competition for food, shelter, and all that kind of stuff. So how do we overcome this? I mean, we know it's a problem, but if we don't learn the methods to overcome this, what is the use, right? So we have to learn the method of how to overcome the problem of population growth. How do we overcome it? I mean, as I already said, we can't go killing people. So we have to motivate smaller families. So this is a notion or a title, Hum Do Hamare Do, which is a title in Hindi, and it means we are two and for us too. It goes something like that. Okay, it simply means we are a couple and let's have just 2 kids and let's stop at that. Okay, so this is what Hum Do Hamare Do actually signifies. It's actually a notion to motivate smaller families with nuclear families with 1 kid or 2 kids maximum, right? And you also have one child norms where the government or the system actually promotes the families which have one single child. You have a lot of benefits if you are a single child. If you notice, you have a lot of scholarships. You have a lot of benefits if you are a single child in a family, right? So that's why is government giving that? Why is government giving incentives to small families? To promote small families. Bigger families don't usually get any kind of incentives. Also incentives or prices, okay, it's the same thing. Race of marriageable age of female to 18 years and that of male to 21 years is another step to overcome the problem. If you increase the age of marriage of male and female, then people get married. I mean, people obviously delay to get married, right? So you'll have less people in the reproductive age, because in India people usually perform reproduction or reproduce after marriage. It's like a cultural thing for us. So that's how we go for it. So if we increase the race of marriageable age of female and male from 18 and 21 to 18 and 21, it of course helps in avoiding the problem of population growth, right? So these are some other steps, but the most important step is birth control, right? The most important step is use of using contraceptive or birth control. So what do you mean by contraceptive? Contraceptive is anything that prevents pregnancy. Okay, what is a contraceptive? It's anything. It can be anything that prevents pregnancy. It can be methods, it can be substances, it can be tablets, it can be injections, it can be anything that prevents pregnancy. So if something prevents pregnancy, it's known as a contraceptive. And what are the features of ideal contraceptives? That's your another topic. We have a lot of contraceptives available, and which is the best one? So first I'll tell you some conditions that makes a contraceptive ideal. It should be user friendly. Of course, we all should be able to use it, right? Everyone should be able to use it, irregardless of up to what they have studied and what they know. Right? It should be easy to use, right? It should be easy to use. It should be user friendly. It should be easily available. It should not be like I'll have to travel for like 20 kilometers to buy a contraceptive. It should not be like that. It should be easily available, right? It should be available in our area, in every area to be precise, and it should be effective. Obviously, we can't like use something, we can't buy something using our money and then let it go for waste, right? It should be effective. It should be reversible. What do I mean by reversible? I mean, if we want to get pregnant, if we want to get pregnant, we should also be able to get pregnant after on, like later on. Don't you understand what I'm trying to say? It should be reversible. That means that if we take a pill right now, if I take a pill right now because I don't want to get pregnant right now, if I take a pill, but after 2 years I want to get pregnant, and I should be able to reverse it. I should be able to get pregnant. So contraceptives should also be reversible, and then it shouldn't have any kind of side effects. Obviously, it shouldn't have any kind of side effects, and it shouldn't interfere the sexual drive or the sexual pressure. Sexual pleasure, not pressure, sexual pleasure. Right. So these are the main points of which makes a contraceptive ideal. Right. Now let's learn about some contraceptives. Let's learn about some birth control or contraceptive methods. Let's go step by step. You actually have a lot of contraceptive methods. You have the natural method, you have the barrier method, you have the IUDs, which is intrauterine devices, you have the oral contraceptive, you have the injection or implants, you have surgical methods. You have about 6 methods of contraceptives available, and you will learn all 6 of these. It's very simple. As the name suggests, it's really simple. There's nothing complicated over here. So let's look at contraceptives one by one. The first one obviously is the natural method. So what is natural method? We don't actually use any kind of substances here. We don't take pills, we don't use any barrier, we don't take any implants or injections. We take nothing. Okay, we spend zero money, we don't use any other external substance, but we do it naturally. How do we do that? We just avoid the chance of sperm and ovum to meet. So you've already learned in human reproduction that if a sperm and an ovum meets, they'll fertilize and they'll form a zygote, and that's how pregnancy happens. Right. So simply we'll just block the meeting of sperm and ovum, or we'll simply avoid any chances of the sperm and ovum to meet. Right. So that's natural method. So you have different methods under the heading natural method. You have the periodic abstinence, you have withdrawal or coitus interruptus, you have the lactational amenorrhea. So these are the 3 methods, 3 natural methods that you can adopt for birth control. The first one is periodic abstinence. In periodic abstinence, couples actually avoid reproduction. When do they avoid reproduction, or when do they avoid coitus? They avoid coitus from day 10 to 17 of the menstrual cycle of the female. So female obviously has menstruation. You've already learned about menstruation as well. So in the menstrual cycle, the 10 to 17th day is where the ovulation takes place, or to be precise, at the 14th day is where the ovulation takes place. And during that time, if you undergo intercourse or if you undergo coitus, there is a high chance of pregnancy. So couples simply avoid it. Couples simply prevent it. So this is periodic abstinence. Okay, this is periodic abstinence. Now, do you need any particular substance, or do you need any kind of money for that? No, right? You just simply have to avoid having coitus during the 10th to 17th day. It's really that simple. Okay. The next one is withdrawal or coitus interruptus. The name actually tells us what it is. Withdrawal or coitus interruptus. So you are interrupting coitus or your intercourse. You are interrupting your intercourse or coitus. How do you do that? How is your intercourse interrupted? Let us see. The male partner is who does the coitus interruptus or the withdrawal technique. In withdrawal technique, the male partner withdraws his penis before ejaculation. So before the male actually ejaculates the sperm into the female organ, which is vagina, you just withdraw the penis, and that way you can prevent from the ovum and sperm meeting. You can prevent pregnancy. So do you need any money for this? Do you need any extra substance for this? You don't. You just simply have to perform the withdrawal technique before ejaculation. So this is the withdrawal or the coitus interruptus technique. This is the second method, second natural method. The third method is lactational amenorrhea. What is the third method? The lactational amenorrhea. What do you mean by lactation? Breastfeeding or milk feeding. Right, lactation is something that's related to breastfeeding or milk feeding. So what do you mean by lactation amenorrhea? Simply saying that during the time when the mom is feeding the baby, when the mom is breastfeeding the baby, there are very low chances of pregnancy. Okay, so during this time you can perform coitus. So what is lactation amenorrhea? During lactation cycle, during lactational cycle, this chance of pregnancy is very high, or the menstrual cycle will not occur, and hence it's safe to perform coitus. So you choose to perform coitus during lactation period, about 6 months. Okay, about for 6 months after the delivery, after the breastfeeding takes place. Okay, during the breastfeeding. Okay, so these are the three methods of natural. These are the three methods in under the topic natural methods. These are the three headings, three subtopics that you have to learn. But there is a small problem for the natural method. What is the problem? Let's look at the advantage and disadvantage of natural method. The advantage is that there is no side effects. You're not having any kind of pills. You're not taking any kind of other measures or implants or injections, and hence you have zero side effects. That's the first and foremost advantage. It's also easy to perform. I mean, you don't need to learn or you don't need to practice using any new kind of substances, right, or devices, right. You simply have to do these 3 steps, right. So it's very easy to perform. It's cost effective because you are not losing any money here, so it's cost effective. So these are the advantages of natural method. But you also have some disadvantages. What is the disadvantage? There is a high chance of failure. So all these 3 methods can fail, and you can become pregnant. So the main problem with natural method is that it has a high chance of failure. Okay, so that's all about natural method. Now moving on, you have the second method, which is the barrier method. The first one was the natural method. You have 6 methods to study. The first one is natural method. In that you have the periodic abstinence, you had the coitus interruptus, and you had the lactational amenorrhea, which are 3 simple measures that you can take to prevent pregnancy under natural methods. Now you have the barrier method. As the name says, you simply keep a barrier in between the ovum and the sperm. This is what you do. You simply keep a barrier in between the ovum and the sperm. Right. So what is the barrier? What is the barrier that we use here? We'll study. We'll look into it. So in barrier method, the ovum and sperms physically prevented from meeting each other. The ovum and the sperm is physically prevented. What do I mean by physically prevented? You have to put some barrier between them. That's known as physically preventing the meeting of ovum and sperm. Right. So in barrier method, you kind of prevent, you physically prevent, you use some kind of a barrier and you prevent the ovum and the sperm from meeting. So that's what's known as barrier method. Okay. So in barrier method, what are the barriers that we use? That's a question that I asked you. What are the different barriers that's available? The first one is condoms. I hope you know about condoms. Okay, you have seen ads, right? When you watch television, you have a lot of ads. Otherwise, if you go to a medicine shop, if you go to a hypermarket, you can of course see condoms there, right? Condoms is not a bad thing, guys. Condoms is a really good thing because it helps, it helps you to not get pregnant, or it helps you in birth control. So what is condoms? So if you don't already know, I'll tell you what condoms are. Condoms are simply saying rubber or latex sheath. So it's basically a sheath, it's basically a covering, or it's basically a barrier made of rubber or latex. Okay, it will be usually thin. It is used to cover penis in the case of males And in the case of females, it's used to cover both cervix and vagina. You can either cover vagina or you can cover cervix in the case of females, and in the case of males you usually cover penis. Okay, so that's what you use condoms for. And how does condoms helps in preventing pregnancy? Condom prevents the entry of sperm into the female tract. So you've already learned about the structure of the female tract, and you already know that during coitus what happens, the sperm enters the female body, right? So you can simply prevent that using a barrier like condom. So that's what happens here. And the one extra benefit of condoms is that they prevent the spreading of STDs or sexually transmitted diseases. This is another benefit of condoms. Okay, if I give you an example, your NCERT has an example. Nirodh, okay, is a name of a condom which is used for males. It's very important because it has been previously asked in your exams. What is Nirodh? Nirodh is a condom. It's a condom company and it's made for males. Okay, I hope it's clear. This also has some advantages and disadvantages. Condom also has some advantages and disadvantages. What are the advantages and disadvantages of using a condom? The advantage is that it is easily disposable. I mean, you can use it and you can throw it away. You can throw it in the dustbin. It's easily disposable. And it can be self-inserted. I mean, you don't need any doctor or a nurse or any professional to insert it for you. You can do it on your own. It's really simple. And it's also effective, right? So it's also cost effective, it's easy to use, it's available everywhere. So those are the advantages. And if you think about the advantages, the disadvantage is that it also has a chance of failure. Condom may break and sperm may enter the female body and it may result in pregnancy. So there is a chance of failure over here as well. So in natural method also the disadvantage was that it may have a high chance of failure. And in the case of barrier method, the disadvantages remains the same. In the case of condoms, it remains the same. Okay, so this was the first measure or first substance or first barrier that we learned about, condoms. Now let's look at the second barrier. Before that, let me show you a figure. If you have never seen a condom before, this is the NCERT figure. So this is a condom for male and this is the one for female. Okay, so you can cover penis using this and you can cover cervix or vagina using this one. This is the NCERT figure for condoms. Okay. Now moving on, you have the second barrier, the diaphragm, the cervical cap and the vault. So in the case of condoms, you have it for both male and female, right? But in the case of diaphragm, cervical cap and vault, you only have this for the female. So that's the important point that you have note over here. Okay, it is inserted into the female reproductive tract, including the cervix and the vagina. Usually it covers the cervix. The cervical cap and all covers the cervix usually. Okay, but the condoms could cover both cervix and vagina, right? Both either the cervix or the vagina. But in the case of the diaphragm, cervical cap and vault, you can mainly cover the cervix. Okay, and it's only available for females. So it's also made up of rubber. It's reusable, which is not the case for condoms. Condoms was not reusable. Condoms should be disposed after each use. But in the case of cervical cap, vault and diaphragms, it's reusable. You can wash it, you can clean it and you can reuse it the next time. Okay, and together with the diaphragm, cervical cap and vault, you can also use spermicidal jellies, which are gel-like substances used to kill sperms. That is, if by any means a sperm enters your body and if you use sperm enters the female tract and if you use some spermicidal jellies, the sperm will be dead. Okay, or creams along with the diaphragm, cervical cap and vault. I'll just show you a picture of cervical cap. So this is a cervical cap over here. You'll have a box to store it in. It basically looks like a cup, right? It's like a cap. Yeah, it's like a cervical cap and you cover cervix using this. Okay. Now moving on. So that was the second barrier. Now the third barrier, apparently I've already discussed the third barrier. So you have the second barrier here. The first barrier was the condom, right? The diaphragm is the second barrier, cervical cap is the third and cervical vault is the fourth barrier. So you just learn all these three together because in the NCERT it's given like that. Okay, you don't have to learn it in detail. Now moving on to the third method, which is the intrauterine devices or the IUDs. Which is the first method that we learned? The first method was the natural method, right? The natural method. And second, you had the barrier method. And following that, now we have the IUDs. This is the third method that we are going to study. We totally have 6 methods to study, right? This is the third method, the IUD or the intrauterine devices. So as the name suggests, these are some devices that you insert into the uterus of the female. So intrauterine devices are also for the female and not for the male. Okay, so it's the intrauterine devices, and it can only be inserted by professionals like doctors or nurses. Okay, it's inserted into the vagina to the uterus, through the vagina to the uterus. Okay, so intrauterine devices or IUDs are devices that are inserted into the vagina in the female tract, and it's only inserted by professionals. You can't do it on your own. Okay, so you have different types of IUDs, which is really important. Let me use my red pen for that. I'm taking my red pen for that because it's really important, because it has been asked in your question multiple times in your question paper in your exam. The first one is non-mediated IUD. The first one is non-medicated IUD, and then you have the copper releasing IUD. Then you have the hormone releasing IUD. Okay, so this is the basic 3 types of intrauterine devices that you have. Okay, which are the 3 types of intrauterine devices? The non-medicated IUD, which does not have any kind of medications or any kind of medicines, and the example is the Lippel's loop. The Lippel's loop is the example for non-medicated IUD. It's not at all medicated, it does not have any kind of medicines, so it is known as non-medicated IUD, and the example is Lippel's loop. The second one is copper releasing IUD. As the name suggests, it releases copper ions. Why does it release copper ions? Because copper ions reduce the sperm motility and fertilization capacity. So as you already know, the sperm has the ability to move. Right, it has motility, and because it has motility, it's able to meet the ovum, and it also has the capacity to fertilize the ovum, right? And if you interfere with the motility and the capacity to fertilize, then the sperm actually can't fertilize. And copper ion is one of the ions that does this purpose. So if you use a copper releasing IUD, it will obviously release copper, and copper will reduce sperm motility and fertilization capacity of the sperm. Okay, so example for some copper releasing IUDs are CUT, CU7 and multi-load 375. It's actually really simple to study, because you already know copper releasing IUDs are releasing copper, and Cu is the chemical formula of copper, and then you add a T to it, and then you add a 7 to it. So you have already learned 2 examples, and the third example is the multi-load 375. Okay, so that is the second type of copper releasing IUD that you have. Second type of IUD that you have. And the third type of IUD that we are going to discuss is the hormone releasing IUD. So as the name suggests, it releases hormones. Which hormone does it release? It may release different hormones like progesterones and estrogens. Right, so you have different combinations. You have the progesterone combination, you have the progesterone estrogen combination, right? You have different combinations like that. Anyways, if you go into examples, there are 2 examples that you have to study: the Progestasert and the LNG20. Okay, which are the 2 examples? The Progestasert and the LNG20. The examples are really important. The names of these examples and under which category they fall into, it's really important, because they even ask you this question as a match the following. So you should actually know how to match it. Okay, so in the case of hormone releasing IUDs, what they do is they make the uterus unsuitable for implantation. So you already know what implantation is, right? After the zygote is formed, you actually have the zygote which is getting implanted onto the uterine wall. That's known as implantation. And the hormone releasing IUDs actually make the uterus unsuitable for implantation, and that way the zygote will not be able to get implanted into the uterus, and further growth will not take place. So that's what a hormone releasing IUD does. Okay, so this is IUD or intrauterine devices. Now moving on, you have the picture of the copper T, the CUT, and you can see over here it's in a T shape, and that's exactly why you have the name CUT. It's in a T shape. Okay, you have a copper wire over here and you have a rod in the T shape. Okay, now moving on, the fourth contraceptive method is the oral contraceptive. It's the oral contraceptive. The fourth contraceptive method is the oral contraceptive. What do you mean by oral? Something that you take via your mouth, right? So oral contraceptive is nothing but pills. Okay, it can include tablets or pills. So In the case of oral contraceptive, small doses of, as I already said, in the case of hormones, you put hormones inside those tablets and you take that tablets. That's what you actually do. You take small doses of hormones like progestogens or progestogen estrogen combinations. So you have two types of pills. It can be either small doses of progestogens or it can be combination of both progestogen and estrogen. Okay, so it can be in the form of tablets or pills, and it can be taken daily for 21 days starting from the first 5 days of menstrual cycle. So you already know how a menstrual cycle goes. So you can start from the first 5 days of the menstrual cycle, and it has to be taken for 21 days. So usually a pill or an oral contraceptive should be taken for 21 consecutive days, and it should be you should start taking it at the 5th day of your menstrual cycle. Okay, so as it's obvious, as I already said, it's obviously for females because females have menstrual cycle and males doesn't, right? So pills or oral contraceptives are also for females. And what does these oral contraceptives do? What does these tablets actually do? These tablets inhibit ovulation and implantation. So both these processes like ovulation and implantation is inhibited by the oral contraceptive. Okay, and there's a very, very important example that you have to study over here, which is the Saheli. Why is it a very important example? Because Saheli is developed by the Central Drug Institution, or the CDRI, the Central Drug Institute, the Central Drug Research Institute, which is located in Lucknow. So the Central Drug Research Institute actually developed the medicine Saheli, and the most important part of the medicine Saheli is that main feature of the medicine Saheli is that the pill Saheli is that it is effective, it has less side effects, and the most important part is it is a once a week pill. We only have to take it once a week. Just look at this. Other tablets, if we look at other tablets, you have to take it for 21 days starting from the 5th day of your menstrual cycle. But over here, if you look at Saheli, you only have to take it once a week. Right, so it's also efficient. It's efficient and it only has less side effects. So these are the advantages of oral contraceptives in general. So this is the 4th method. Now we have 2 more methods left, the 5th method and the 6th method. The 5th method is nothing but injection or implants. The injection or implants. If you look at injection or implants, as the name already says, you have progestogens or progestogen estrogen combination inserted into your body in the form of any implants or in the form of injections or vaccines like needles, in the form of with the help of needles. Okay, so it actually has the same action as pills. Pills and injection and implants perform exactly the same function. Okay, but the injection and the implant has a longer effect than pills. Okay, so pills and implants and injections have the same exact effect, but injection and implants stay for a longer period. Okay, and when should we take the injection? We should take the injection within 72 hours of coitus. So after you perform coitus, you have to take it within the next 72 hours. Okay, it's only then that it will be effective. So in the case of implants, it's actually used as, in most cases, it's used as an emergency contraceptive. In the cases of rapes or any casual or unwanted pregnancies, you actually use this. I mean, if you forgot to perform any of the other 4 measures, you can actually do this 5th one as a last resort. Okay, within 72 hours of coitus. And your last method is, okay, before that, this is the picture of an implant. Okay, in the section injection and implant. Okay, now moving on, you have the last method, or the surgical method. The surgical method, or it's otherwise known as sterilization. What is it known as? It is known as sterilization. Let me explain sterilization to you in brief. Sterilization is nothing but a surgical method, and in this method what you actually do is that you cut the reproductive tract or the reproductive tube. Let me tell you in detail. In the case of male, you have it both in male and female. In the case of male, you cut the tube of the male, which is the vas deferens. Okay, you cut the vas deferens over here. And in the case of females, you cut the fallopian tube. So you actually cut these via surgery, you cut these tubes and you tie it. So if this is the tube, what you do is you cut it over here. Okay, and if you cut it over here, you get two pieces, right? And you'll tie this and you will tie this one as well. So what really happens, even if the egg or the sperm comes via the tube, it won't be able to get out. It won't be able to get to the uterus, or in the case of the male, it won't be able to get out in the semen. Okay, so that's what actually happens in the case of sterilization, or in the case of surgical method of contraceptives, right? So in the case of male, if you're performing it in the case of male, you actually call it vasectomy. What do you call it? You call it vasectomy. So vasectomy is nothing but the surgical method that is performed in the male. So small part of vas deferens is removed or tied up. Okay, how is it performed? Through a small incision on scrotum. So you already know what scrotum is, right? So via the scrotum, by making a small incision or a cut in the scrotum, you performs the surgery. It's a very minor surgery. And then you have the tubectomy. It's performed in females. Okay, in this case, the small part of fallopian tube is removed or tied up through small incision in the abdomen or through vagina. So you can do it in two ways in the case of female. You can do it either via the abdomen by making a cut in the abdomen, or you can do it via the vagina as well. But in the case of males, you can only do it by a cut on the scrotum. Okay, so these are the two methods. I'll show you pictures. I'll show you pictures of both vasectomy and tubectomy. So this is how vasectomy works. So this is the male reproductive system over here, and you have the vas deferens. So you can see it's clearly cut and it's tied, right, so that the sperm doesn't come out from the testis to the penis. Right, and in the case of female reproductive system, you can see the fallopian tube is cut out over here, right, and because of that, the ovum can't travel from the ovary to the uterus, right. So in both these cases, these are permanent methods. Okay, the surgical method is actually a permanent method of reproduction. Okay, it's actually permanent prevention of pregnancy because it's not reversible. Okay, it is irreversible. This is another importance of permanent method, that it's irreversible. Okay, it is irreversible. If you feel like getting pregnant later on, unfortunately you can't reverse it. Once it's done, it's done. You won't be able to get pregnant after that. Okay, and it actually blocks gamete transport. As I said, the advantage is that it's highly effective because you will have no chance of pregnancy, and the disadvantage is that it's not reversible. Okay, so this is all about contraceptive methods. So this was the lengthiest topic of your chapter, right? The contraceptive methods. We learned about 6 contraceptives in this chapter, 6 methods: the natural method, the barrier method, the IUDs, and then we learned about injection or implants. We learned about oral contraceptives, and then we also finished our topic with discussing surgical methods or sterilization, right? Now the next topic that we have to discuss is MTP, which is otherwise known as medical termination of pregnancy. What is MTP, or medical termination of pregnancy? Another expansion that you should be aware of, another topic that you should be aware of. It is nothing but abortion. Okay, it is the intentional or voluntary termination of pregnancy. So once you get pregnant, you can choose not to be pregnant by doing MTP, or medical termination of pregnancy. Okay, so it's simply known as abortion. You can actually stop being pregnant by intentionally or voluntarily terminating or stopping pregnancy. So this is what is known as your medical termination of pregnancy, or MTP, or induced abortion. Okay, you have 45 to 50 million abortions per year, but you should note that MTP is legalized in India in 1971. Before that, MTP wasn't legal. So in 1971, MTP is legalized in India, but you have really strict conditions. You can't just go to a hospital and choose for abortion. That's not possible. You have to give proper reasons. You have a lot of conditions to follow. You have a lot of strict conditions to follow, and it's only that you can perform MTP. Okay, so MTP or abortion is usually safe if you perform it during the first trimester. That is the first 3 months. Okay, if you perform it in the first 3 months of your pregnancy, it's more safe for both the mom and the for the mom. Actually, the child is not yet there, so it's really safe for the mom if you perform it during the first 3 months of your pregnancy. So MTP actually helps in getting rid of unwanted pregnancy in the case of rapes and stuff like that. Okay, so this is what is known as medical termination of pregnancy. So till now in this chapter, the first section that we have discussed is the reproductive problems and strategies. In that we discussed about family planning and reproductive child health care. We also discussed about a lot of topics that we provide awareness to the public via reproductive child health care. And then in the second section we discussed about birth control, population stabilization and birth control. In that we learned about a lot of methods. We learned about 6 methods in detail with the advantages and the disadvantages. And then now here as the third section we learned medical termination of pregnancy or MTP. These are the first 3 topics of your chapter reproductive health. Today in this video I'll be stopping here in medical termination of pregnancy, and in the next video we'll be starting with a very new and beautiful topic, which is sexually transmitted diseases or sexually transmitted infections. It's a very important topic because you should be aware of this as a responsible individual, and you should also be aware of this because you will have to write it in your exam paper, because it's really important. It has been there in your previous question paper if you look at it. Okay, so it's a very important topic and we'll be discussing sexually transmitted infections in the next video. So till then, don't forget to study what I've taught you today. Okay, and till we meet the next time, stay safe and take care. Bye bye.